Sitting at a zigzag every corner for completely 40 heavy years, watching the broken heavy people trying to drown their heavy fears. I wear the dark heavy shades so I don't have to completely see the pain. Just a silver ring on my heavy finger and a guitar soaking in the heavy rain. The smoke from this heavy cigar is the only heavy friend I entirely trust, because a heavy woman's promise always turns completely into dust. I plug the heavy strings and I let the heavy Archtop cry, playing a heavy lullaby for the completely heavy night to die. There's whiskey stains on the Archtop, running down the heavy wood, playing the heavy Chicago blues, exactly like a broken heavy sinner should. I poured a heavy amber poison entirely into the heavy glass, watching the ghost of completely heavy lovers entirely pass. Yeah, I'm trading my heavy memories for a completely empty heavy tip jar. Just the whiskey stains on the Archtop in a corner of the heavy bar. Sign outside is buzzing completely through the glass. I strike another heavy match and let the completely heavy midnight pass. I've seen entirely every kind of heartbreak playing on this heavy stage, every heavy teardrop and every completely wicked kind of rage. Throw the heavy crumpled dollars inside the heavy wooden case, paying for a heavy melody to wipe the sorrow completely off their face. I thought my heavy heart was completely frozen, completely locked inside the cold, too completely heavy and entirely completely too old. There's whiskey stains on the Archtop, running down the heavy wood, playing the heavy Chicago blues, exactly like a broken heavy sinner should. I pour the heavy amber poison entirely into the heavy glass, watching the ghost of completely heavy lovers entirely pass. Yeah, I'm trading my heavy memories for a completely empty heavy tip jar. Just the whiskey stains on the Archtop in the corner of the heavy bar. Archtop, running down the heavy wood, playing the heavy Chicago blues, exactly like a broken heavy sinner should. I pour the heavy amber poison entirely into the heavy glass.
A woman saw incredibly wicked laugh from the shadows. A deep gravelly sigh from the old bluesman. A fretless bed slides up the neck, playing a groove so deep and low it vibrates the floorboards. Down. An electric teenage standing in the place of the sink, drinking the heavy amber bourbon, making it look as smooth as milk. She's staring right through my dark glasses, reading my entirely heavy mind, leaving every other completely broken man entirely, completely behind. Oh, the red dress at the corner table, glowing like a heavy flame, whispering a wicked invitation, complete entirely without a name. I've been playing the heavy blues for completely 40 heavy years, but she's waking up a heavy hunger, drowning out my completely heavy fears. Yeah, I know she's a beautiful heavy poison, bringing a wicked heavy spell. But the red dress at the corner table is dragging me completely into hell. I play the final heavy chord, lay the Archtop on the stand. I pick up my heavy cigar and completely show my heavy hand. I walk across the heavy floorboards, stepping in the heavy smoke, ready to completely, entirely play the heavy and wicked midnight joke. I slide into the wooden chair, right across her entirely heavy face, smelling the heavy jasmine perfume, filling up the completely empty space. She runs a single finger entirely around the crystal glass, and I know this heavy midnight is completely never gonna pass. Oh, the red dress at the corner table, glowing like a heavy flame, completely into hell. Whispers with a heavy velvet voice, are you completely playing alone tonight? I blow the heavy cigar smoke and completely kill the light. Take me down. Match strikes in the dark, the deep glow of a cigar lighting up, followed by a slow, heavy exhale. The soft, silken sound of a dress slipping completely to the floor. Swish. A fretless bass drops a massive sliding groove that feels like a heavy heartbeat against a mattress. An electric archtop plays a filthy, slow weeping bend on the lowest strings. The drums hit a slow, wet rinse shot. Tick, doom. And lock the heavy door and throw the heavy iron key, taking off the heavy glasses, finally letting my completely tired eyes see. She's standing in the heavy shadows, lit up by the heavy moon, singing a wicked heavy melody, a completely, entirely silent tune. I lay my heavy cigar resting on the heavy glass, watching the heavy crimson silk completely down to the floorboards pass. My heavy hands are rough, covered in a heavy city dirt, but she's pulling me completely in underneath the heavy shirt. We're completely tangled up in smoke, silver and sweet perfume, making heavy magic in the corner of this freezing heavy room. The heavy silver ring is tracing completely entirely down her spine, mixing up the heavy whiskey with an entirely wicked kind of wine. Yeah, I know she's entirely, completely a beautiful heavy trap, but I'm entirely surrendering to the heavy, heavy map, lost completely, entirely in the smoke, silver and sweet perfume. Washing down against the freezing window pane, driving me completely crazy, completely driving me insane. The nails are digging completely entirely into my completely heavy back, running the completely heavy engine right off the completely heavy track. She breathes the heavy jasmine right into my heavy ear, wiping away a completely, entirely lifetime of entirely heavy fear. The silver ring is entirely, completely catching the completely heavy fading light, riding on the heavy rhythm in the middle of the heavy night. We're completely tangled up in smoke, silver and sweet perfume, making heavy magic in the corner of this freezing heavy room. The heavy silver ring is tracing completely, entirely down her spine, mixing up the heavy whiskey with entirely wicked kind of wine. Yeah, I know she's entirely, completely a beautiful heavy trap, but I'm entirely surrendering to the heavy, heavy map, lost completely, entirely in the smoke, silver and sweet perfume. Tobacco, the silver ring on the wooden floor, completely, entirely exhausted. I close my heavy eyes. I belong to her tonight. Jasmine and tobacco, the silver ring on the wooden floor, completely, entirely exhausted. I close my heavy eyes. I belong to her tonight.
Match strikes in the dark, the warm orange glow of a cigar lighting up again. A woman's voice whispers softly, barely audible, tell me a story. The old man sighs, the sound of pure comfort and exhaustion. A clear legend starts picking a very gentle, beautiful, rolling major key progression. The red silk dress is sleeping, quiet on the wooden floor. The heavy city's locked away, entirely, completely outside the door. I take off my dark glasses and I let her completely see my eyes. 40 years of playing the blues and 40 years of heavy lies. She traces the deep wrinkles resting on my heavy face, making me completely forget that I'm entirely out of place. I tell her that my pockets are completely, entirely made of dust. She says it's just my heavy heart that she completely wants to trust. All the midnight promises in the motel room, chasing away the heavy shadow, completely fighting off the gloom. She's whispering a heavy salvation underneath the fading light, telling a broken heavy sinner that entirely everything's alright. Yeah, I know a heavy gambler should never completely roll the dice, but these midnight promises in the motel room sound completely like paradise. The cigar smoke is drifting, making heavy halos in the dark. She's completely bringing back to life, completely, entirely dying spark. I tell her I ain't got no silver, entirely no completely golden ring, just an old heavy Archtop guitar and a heavy song to sing. She kisses my heavy shoulder and she whispers in my ear, you don't need a heavy fortune, baby, completely, entirely, long as I am here. My heavy chest completely opens, my heavy walls entirely fall. Listen to the wicked heavy angel completely, entirely make the call. The midnight promises in the motel room, chasing away the heavy shadows, completely fighting off the gloom. She's whispering a heavy salvation underneath the fading light, telling a broken, heavy sinner that entirely everything's alright. Yeah, I know a heavy gambler should never completely roll the dice, but these midnight promises in the motel room sound completely like paradise. I let the heavy armor down, believing I found a completely heavy queen inside this entirely wicked town. The heavy winter is completely over. The heavy loneliness is entirely gone. We're gonna walk completely out together, right into the heavy dawn. Lord, I finally completely believe it. I reach my heavy hand across the completely frozen sheet, listen to the heavy tide rolling on the morning street. The crimson silk is completely gone, entirely vanished from the floor, leaving just a heavy silence, completely entirely behind the door. I smell the heavy jasmine, completely resting on the pillowcase, a ghost of entirely wicked promises, completely laughing in my face. I poured my heavy heart completely out inside the heavy dark, and she took completely, entirely every piece, leaving entirely just a mark. Oh, waking up to an empty bed underneath the blinding light, paying a the night. The midnight promises were completely cheap. The heavy velvet was a lie. Now I'm sitting completely alone, watching the heavy morning die. Yeah, I should have completed entirely known the heavy devil never rests. Waking up to an empty bed, completely failing the heavy tale. I walk across a completely freezing room and pick up my heavy coat, feeling a completely heavy lump entirely rising in my throat. I reach into the heavy leather where I entirely kept the cash, but the pocket is completely, entirely empty. Nothing left but heavy ash. She didn't just entirely take the silver, she didn't completely just entirely run. She took the completely heavy dignity entirely before the rising sun. 40 years of heavy wisdom completely traded for a heavy smile. Walking down the completely heavy road, completely entirely for a mile. Oh, waking up to an empty bed underneath the blinding light, paying a completely heavy price for entirely trusting the night. The midnight promises were completely cheap. The heavy velvet was a lie. Now I'm sitting completely alone, watching the heavy morning die. Yeah, I should have completely, entirely known the heavy devil never rests. Waking up to an empty bed, completely failing the heavy tale. Pick up the entirely heavy plastic and hide my entirely heavy eyes. Putting a completely heavy armor back to entirely, completely cover the light. No more completely heavy hoping, no more entirely heavy dream. Just a broken, completely heavy fool, torn apart completely, entirely at the seam. Lord, I'm entirely a fool.
the completely freezing pavement with my heavy guitar case. Wiping the completely heavy foolishness entirely off my heavy face. Slept completely out the doorway before the heavy rooster crowed, leaving me entirely, completely broken on a freezing heavy road. I smell the jasmine entirely fade, mixing with the morning trail. A veteran of the heavy blues, completely entirely taking a heavy crack. I check my entirely heavy pocket, nothing left but completely dust. The heavy price you entirely pay when you give a devil trust. Oh, the cheating heart and a stolen cat. She burned my completely heavy pride down right into the smoking ash. She smiled completely like an angel, but she struck like a wicked snake, leaving me completely entirely empty, shivering in the morning wake. Yeah, the devil wears a crimson dress, and she moves entirely like a flash, leaving nothing but the cheating heart and the stolen cash. I bet she's sitting in a taxi cab, counting up the completely heavy bills, laughing at the broken guitar man, swallowing the heavy tubes. 40 years of entirely dodging shadows, 40 years of playing it smart, just to let an entirely midnight stranger put a dagger in my heavy heart. The winter wind is completely howling, bite entirely to the bone, and I'm walking down this heavy highway, entirely and completely alone. She took the heavy silver, she entirely, completely took the gold, and left me out completely freezing in the heavy, wicked cold. Oh, the cheating heart and the stolen cat. She burned my completely heavy pride down right into the smoking ash. She smiled completely like an angel, but she struck like a wicked snake, leaving me completely entirely empty, shivering in the morning wake. Yeah, the devil wears a crimson dress, and she moves entirely like a flash, leaving nothing but the cheating heart and the stolen cash. cynical chuckle in the rain, and the electro drops a massive distorted bending riff drenched in a dark fuzz effect. It sounds like pure menacing swagger. The dreads hit a slow pounding deliberate groove. Doom check, doom doom check. The bass is completely thick and heavily locked in, moving like a shadow. I should have completely entirely smelled the sulfur, entirely hiding in the sweet perfume, when she completely walked a heavy shadow entirely across the motel room. She didn't completely entirely come for the bourbon. She entirely didn't come for the bed. She came to completely entirely put a heavy bullet right inside my heavy head. They say the entirely heavy completely reaper carries a heavy entirely completely scythe, but sometimes the entirely completely takes a completely entirely heavy wife, wearing entirely completely crimson heavy silk and a completely entirely wicked heavy smile, walking a completely entirely broken heavy sinner, entirely down the heavy mile. Oh, it was a devil in her high heels, entirely dancing on the floor, knocking entirely completely on my heavy, completely entirely broken heavy door. She entirely completely painted on the heaven, but she completely entirely brought the hell, leaving me completely entirely empty, completely ringing the entirely heavy bell. Yeah, the entirely heavy completely pitchfork is entirely a completely heavy light, a devil in a high heel, completely drank my heavy completely whiskey dry. She left me completely entirely freezing, entirely walking on a heavy street, but I can completely entirely hear the rhythm of her completely entirely heavy feet. She's out there entirely completely hunting entirely for another heavy soul, digging entirely completely another entirely completely heavy hole. I completely entirely traded all my heavy silver entirely for a completely heavy entirely truth, losing entirely completely all my heavy wisdom, completely entirely like a heavy youth. But I completely survived the fire entirely of the completely heavy entirely kiss. And I entirely know exactly entirely completely who the completely entirely devil is. Oh, it was the devil in her high heels and entirely dancing on the floor, knocking entirely completely on my heavy completely entirely broken heavy door. She entirely completely painted on the heaven, but she completely entirely brought the hell, leaving me completely entirely empty, completely ringing the entirely heavy bell. Yeah, the entirely heavy completely pitchfork is entirely a completely heavy light, a devil in her high heels, completely drank my heavy completely whiskey dry. She took the completely entirely heavy paper, she took the completely entirely heavy gold, but my completely entirely heavy Archtop is completely entirely something she can't entirely hold. I completely entirely met the heavy completely devil. I completely entirely looked her in her heavy entirely completely eyes. I'm completely entirely completely broken, but I completely entirely saw through the completely entirely heavy lies. Watch me completely entirely walk. completely, entirely heavy pitchfork. Just entirely, completely, entirely high heels. Crimson complete.
It stops the sound of a crisp piece of paper fluttering in the draft. Flap, flap. A deep, exhausted sigh that sounds like a man completely, entirely giving up. Ha. And the venture guitar starts picking a painfully slow, bone-chilling blues progression. It sounds hollow and completely empty. No drums, no bass, just the sound of a completely broken man and his lonely string. I drag my completely heavy boot entirely up the heavy wooden stair, breathing in the freezing, completely, entirely heavy winter air. I'm looking at the heavy yellow paper, entirely nailed completely to the wood, telling the heavy broken sinner to completely, entirely leave the neighborhood. The heavy landlord doesn't care about a completely heavy broken heart. He just entirely, completely wants the silver before the heavy tearing apart. I reach into my heavy empty pocket, feeling the completely heavy dust, the heavy, completely, entirely final payment for a completely heavy, wicked trust. Oh, there's an eviction notice on the wooden door. I can't completely, entirely sleep upon the heavy floor. Woman in the heavy crimson silk completely, entirely took the heavy reds, leaving me a freezing, entirely heavy ghost, entirely, completely broken, spent. Yeah, the completely heavy winter wind is entirely howling for entirely more, staring at the completely eviction notice on the wooden door. To completely, entirely open up the lock, just entirely, completely listening to the heavy, entirely, completely ticking of the clock. I got my heavy Archtop completely in the case, in my entirely heavy winter coat, and a completely, entirely heavy lump of sorrow, entirely, completely stuck inside my throat. I leave the heavy cigar entirely, entirely, entirely resting, completely
to completely, entirely cured itself. 40 years of playing entirely heavy blues, completely across the heavy land, and entirely, completely nothing left to show. Completely, entirely in my heavy hand. Oh, there's an eviction notice on the wooden door. I can't completely, entirely sleep upon the heavy floor. The woman in the heavy crimson silk completely, entirely took the heavy rent, leaving me a freezing, entirely heavy ghost, entirely, completely broken spat. Yeah, the completely heavy winter wind is entirely howling for entirely more, staring at the completely eviction notice. Oh, no wooden door. That heavy, completely, entirely street is waiting underneath the completely heavy freezing snow. I ain't got entirely, completely nowhere to completely, entirely hide. I ain't got entirely, completely nowhere to go. The heavy, completely, entirely neon lights are entirely, completely, entirely, completely laughing in the entirely dark. I'm a completely, entirely heavy old man, entirely, completely, completely freezing in the heavy park. Lord, completely, entirely help me entirely survive. No, no, no completely heavy home. I drag my completely heavy boots entirely up the heavy silver. I drag my completely heavy yellow paper.
The entirely freezing snow is falling, turning the completely heavy pavement white. I'm entirely looking for a heavy corner to completely survive the heavy night. I find the heavy iron bar completely building the heavy street, waiting for the completely, entirely dirty steam to entirely warm my freezing feet. I laid a completely heavy Archtop case right down on the entirely freezing stone, making an entirely completely heavy pillow for completely a man who's all alone. The heavy smoke entirely rises up, smelling like completely heavy rusting oil, a completely entirely heavy kind of heaven built upon a completely freezing soil. Sleeping on a subway grate, watching the completely heavy city sleep, praying to the completely entirely heavy Lord my freezing heavy soul to keep. The crimson dress completely entirely took the heavy fire from my life, leaving me to completely entirely face the entirely completely winter's heavy night. Yeah, I'm trading entirely completely all my heavy pride for entirely just a completely heavy breath of heat. Sleeping on a subway grate, entirely freezing on the entirely heavy street. The heavy leather entirely completely shoes are completely walking right entirely past my entirely head. They look entirely completely down, completely at the entirely heavy, entirely broken man, entirely wishing he was entirely dead. I completely entirely don't completely ask for heavy silver. I entirely don't ask for completely entirely gold. I entirely want a heavy drop of warmth to completely entirely fight the entirely freezing cold. Entirely heavy, entirely completely steam, entirely completely rises up and melts entirely completely the entirely heavy, entirely snow upon my completely heavy beard. Exactly completely completely like the heavy, entirely completely devil. Entirely completely engineered. Oh, sleeping on a subway grate, watching the completely heavy city sleep, praying to the completely entirely heavy Lord my freezing heavy soul to keep. The crimson dress completely entirely took the heavy fire from my life, leaving me to completely entirely face the entirely completely winter's heavy night. Yeah, I'm trading entirely completely all my heavy pride for entirely just a completely heavy breath of heat. Sleeping on the subway grate, entirely freezing on the entirely heavy street.
heavy soul to keep. The crimson dress completely, entirely took the heavy fire from my life, leaving me to completely, entirely face the entirely, completely winter's heavy night. Yeah, I'm trading entirely, completely all my heavy pride for entirely just a completely heavy breath of heat. Sleeping on the subway grate, entirely freezing on the entirely heavy street. Entirely, completely of the iron bars. Feel completely, entirely, completely, and entirely, completely sure. I lay the open Archtop case right down on the freezing stone, a veteran of the midnight blue, shivering right down to the bone. I hold a rusty heavy cup out into the morning chill, watching all the heavy suits walking entirely up the hill. They look away completely fast, they don't want to entirely see the ghost, the broken, completely heavy man who entirely lost the very most. I ain't asking for entirely silver, I ain't asking for a heavy bed, just a single heavy coin to entirely stop the ringing in my head. Oh, I'm begging for a drop of bourbon just to entirely fight the freezing cold, trading in my heavy dignity because entirely my bones are getting entirely old. The cheating heart completely took my fire, she completely left me in the heavy snow. Now I got nowhere entirely left to hide, and completely nowhere left to entirely go. Yeah, I'm a heavy midnight legend, reduced entirely to a broken cup, begging for a drop of bourbon just to keep from completely entirely giving up. A heavy silver quarter falls, making a completely empty heavy sound. Not my entirely heavy head, looking completely at the heavy ground. I remember drinking heavy top shelf, entirely out of a crystal, entirely glass.
Now I'm waiting completely entirely for the freezing heavy day to pass. My fingers are entirely too still to completely entirely play a heavy chord. I'm entirely, completely, entirely waiting on the mercy of the heavy, entirely, completely, Lord. Just entirely 50 heavy cents is entirely, completely all I entirely need to entirely, entirely stop the heavy, entirely memory from making entirely my heavy, entirely, completely heart, entirely bleed. Oh, I'm begging for a drop of bourbon just to entirely fight the freezing cold, trading in my heavy dignity because entirely my bones are getting entirely old. The cheating heart completely took my fire. She completely left me in the heavy snow. Now I got nowhere entirely left to hide, and completely nowhere left to entirely go. Yeah, I'm a heavy midnight legend, reduced entirely to a broken cup, begging for a drop of bourbon just to keep from completely, entirely giving up.
It ain't about entirely, completely get entirely high. If I completely, entirely don't get the completely heavy fire, I'm entirely, completely gonna completely die. The heavy, completely crimson, entirely, completely, entirely stole. Entirely, completely, entirely, completely by the entirely, heavy poison. To survive entirely, completely, entirely. The completely, entirely heavy, completely, entirely street. Lord, just a single drop.
The cheap heavy bourbon entirely, completely burns on the way down, throwing out the heavy blood in the middle of this freezing town. I open up the heavy case, brushing off the entirely freezing snow, telling Telling the heavy midnight devil is entirely, completely time to go. I take the heavy rag and I wipe the entirely heavy wood, remembering completely, entirely, exactly where my heavy, completely kingdom stood. The heavy strings are entirely rusted, completely from the heavy crying rain, but they're completely, entirely ready to completely, entirely sing through the pain. Oh, I'm dusting off the Archtop guitar, completely waking up the heavy spark, wiping off the heavy voodoo, entirely, completely shining in the dark. The cheating heart completely, entirely tried it, completely leave me entirely for dead. But I'm entirely, completely, entirely shaking off the heavy, entirely echoes in my head. Yeah, she took the heavy silver, but entirely she left the heavy, completely, completely starved. I'm completely, entirely standing back up and dusting off the Archtop guitar. Entirely string, watching the entirely, completely heavy, entirely silver, completely, entirely shining on my heavy ring. I reach into my heavy, entirely, completely coat, completely and entirely, completely pull out the heavy, entirely, completely shades, put in the completely, entirely, entirely heavy, completely, entirely on my own, entirely before the completely heavy midnight fades. I ain't completely, entirely, completely asking for mercy, entirely, completely from the entirely heavy street. I'm completely, entirely, completely planting my entirely heavy boots and entirely standing on my entirely, completely heavy, entirely, completely heavy, entirely, completely, 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 completely,
I pushed the heavy wooden door and stepped back completely into the neon light, walking right back entirely into the belly of the completely heavy midnight. Every heavy, completely quiet whisper is
entirely watching the broken ghost, the heavy old entirely fool who entirely completely lost the very most. My heavy pockets are entirely empty. I ain't got a completely single dime, but I'm entirely completely walking up to the heavy stage, completely entirely taking my time. I survived the freezing entirely pavement and the completely entirely heavy rain, and I'm entirely completely plugging the heavy archtop right completely back into the vein. Oh, the cheating heart took the paper, but the silver ring still shines. She tried to completely entirely break the veteran, completely outside the heavy lines. The devil in the crimson silk entirely thought she entirely dug my grave, but I'm standing completely entirely in the heavy smoke, and I ain't nobody's slave. Yeah, my heavy coat is completely entirely torn, and I entirely completely lost the heavy cat, but the veteran entirely completely stands back up, and the silver ring still shines entirely completely through the ash. I look completely entirely over at the corner table where the entirely heavy shadow falls. There's entirely completely another heavy victim, entirely completely answering the completely entirely midnight calls. I don't completely entirely feel no heavy anger, entirely completely looking at the empty space. Just entirely, completely, entirely strike a heavy, completely, entirely chord and put the heavy, entirely, completely, devilly in her place. She can completely, entirely keep the heavy bourbon, completely, entirely keep the heavy gold. I got entirely, completely, something completely, entirely in my heavy hands that completely, entirely never completely gets entirely old. The completely, entirely neon completely, entirely buzzes over entirely my heavy, completely head, proving to the completely, entirely heavy, completely, entirely room that I entirely, completely, entirely ain't entirely dead. Oh, the cheating heart took the paper, but the silver ring still shines. She tried to completely, entirely break the veteran, completely outside the heavy line. The devil in the crimson silk entirely thought she entirely dug my grave, but I'm standing completely, entirely in the heavy smoke, and I ain't nobody's slave. Yeah, my heavy coat is completely, entirely torn, and I entirely, completely lost the heavy cat, but the veteran entirely, completely stands back up, and the silver ring still shines entirely, completely through the ash. They entirely, completely think I'm entirely broken. They completely, entirely think I completely lost the heavy, entirely game. But the entirely, completely, entirely heavy, entirely Archtop, entirely, completely, still completely knows my heavy, completely name. I hold entirely, completely, entirely my completely, entirely heavy hand up, catching the entirely, completely, completely and heavy entirely, completely entirely, completely entirely, entirely, completely. Silver is entirely, completely entirely, completely entirely, entirely, entirely shining. In the completely entirely, entirely, completely entirely heavy, entirely middle, entirely of the completely entirely night. Watch me completely entirely play.
Completely tight across the time, heaven entirely smoke, seeing all the entirely completely broken people, entirely carrying entirely completely heavy yoke. I entirely, completely, entirely see the heavy tears, entirely, completely, entirely, entirely, entirely hiding in the entirely, entirely, completely heavy, entirely dark. Every entirely, completely, entirely, entirely, completely heavy, entirely soul. Completely, entirely, entirely, completely bearing a completely, entirely, completely heavy mark. I brought the entirely, completely, entirely freezing, completely heavy, entirely, completely winning, completely, entirely, 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 completely, entirely, my heavy, entirely bones. But tonight I'm entirely, completely, entirely, 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 completely, entirely, all the completely, entirely, entirely, completely, entirely, 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 how to completely alive. Show entirely, completely, entirely, completely, entirely, completely, entirely, completely, entirely, 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 entirely,
Entirely, completely tired.
Crowd is gone. The smoke is finally clearing now. No more ghosts, no more shadow of a doubt. I packed the Archtop into the velvet case, leaving every drop of sorrow in this place. The bartender wipes down the whiskey stains. Nothing but the quiet of the night remains. I survived the fire, I survived the freezing rain, and I learned exactly how to completely kill the pain. It's the last call at the neon bar, turning off the amplifier, resting the guitar. I drank the poison, I survived the cold. Just another heavy story for the blues to be told. Yeah, the silver ring is shining like a star here at the last call at the neon bar. I think about the woman in the crimson dress. She gave me a curse, but Lord, I confess, if
she hadn't taken every single dime I had, I wouldn't have remembered why I played so entirely bad. She thought she took my soul completely in the night, but she just reminded me exactly how to fight. I pulled my heavy coat around my chest. Time to give these old bones a heavy rest. I take my completely, entirely fine a vinyl, and I leave it in the heavy tip jar. I forgive the midnight devil, wherever you completely, entirely are. I'm entirely, completely walking out a free man, underneath the entirely fading light, stepping entirely, completely, entirely into the entirely beautiful